Jonty Sargent. And at the age of 11, I suffered with ME, a debilitating, invisible illness that left me isolated and hopeless for more than 6 years. The truth is, there's so many invisible illnesses that are disbelieved and still without proper treatment. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is often misunderstood and misdiagnosed, which can trigger a range of emotional responses, from anxiety and depression to a loss of trust in the healthcare system. So as we begin our journey of discovery, we of course must answer the question, what really is EDS? The Ehlers-Danlos syndromes are a group of 13 individual genetic conditions, all of which affect the body's connective tissue. Connective tissue lies between other tissues and organs, keeping those separate whilst connecting them, holding everything in place and providing support, just like the mortar between bricks. In EDS, a gene mutation causes a certain kind of connective tissue, the kind will depend on the type of EDS, but usually a form of collagen, to be fragile and stretchy. This stretchiness can sometimes be seen in the skin of someone with EDS. Individuals with the condition may also be able to extend their joints further than is usual. This is known as being hypermobile, bendy, or even double-jointed. As collagen is present throughout the body, people with EDS tend to experience a broad range of symptoms, most of them less visible than the skin and joint differences. These are complex syndromes affecting many systems of the body at once. Despite this, EDS is often an invisible disability. Symptoms commonly include, but are not limited to, long-term pain, chronic fatigue, dizziness, palpitations, and digestive disorders. Such problems and their severity vary considerably from person to person, even in the same type of EDS and within the same family. For the last few months, we've spent time with a number of individuals with EDS. This is their story.
EDS filming, take one.
That's okay?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay.
In the morning when I get up, I have to be careful about how I'm getting out of bed because I don't know how I've moved at night and things might have popped out of place. Like I've partly dislocated my knee in my sleep, I've dislocated my jaw, my ribs, my wrists, you know, so just at the beginning of the day I have to worry about those kinds of things. That doesn't stop, obviously, throughout the day. I've got to be careful of what I'm doing. The pain elements there sort of all the time. Painkillers don't necessarily help, but I've sort of learnt to just accept it and deal with it. And then, yeah, the obvious one is my hands. So at the moment, my hands, I'd say probably for about the last 2 years is really when it started, and it's sort of been progressively getting worse across those 2 years. I don't feel down about it. I just sort of wake up and my immediate reaction or instinct is, right, let's not move too quickly, let's not jump out of bed, let's just quickly try to assess, is my body all okay, is everything in where it should be, kind of thing.
You seem the ideal doctor. You seem very pragmatic. Was it something you always wanted to do, or has your experience of EDS kind of led you a little bit more that way and interested you a little bit more?
In hindsight, I do wonder whether that want to help people comes from having to coming across so many challenges in life that I didn't really know were challenges at the time, and having to sort of figure out ways around things and that kind of thing. I think that's probably ultimately why I want to help people, because I've had to do it myself, and so I want to be able to support people so they don't have to do that necessarily. I started medical school at 18. First year was okay. Second year it started getting a bit harder. I started having more symptoms. Sort of the more uni progressed, the more symptoms I was getting, the more pain I was getting, the more fatigue, the more partial dislocations. It's difficult because I think with EDS you see a lot of people in their late teens, sort of early uni life, really start to deteriorate. And I don't know whether it's just an age thing. I don't know whether, you've been through puberty at that point and that's just what happens with EDS. But it definitely just got worse and worse through uni, and I wasn't diagnosed until third year. So up until that point, I still didn't know what was going on. I just noticed more and more symptoms and that it was getting a bit more serious. Now I've got a diagnosis, and now the medical school knows. They're trying to be supportive, but they went around about it in probably the worst way possible. I'd have sort of monthly meetings, and I remember one of these meetings I had, I was supposed to be in a clinic sort of the day before in the morning, and this is one of the days where I did wake up with a dislocated jaw. So as I'm sure you can imagine, getting into clinic for 9 a.m, not really going to happen. But I was so adamant that this condition wasn't going to get me down, it wasn't going to stop me from doing what I need to do, that I popped it back in place. I wrote a little note on a piece of paper saying why I was late. I turned up to the clinic, I got turned away saying you can't be here, you need to go home. And then when I had the meeting the next day with the year lead, they were like, this is completely irresponsible, you shouldn't be doing this. The medical school wanted me to go to A&E anytime I had any kind of problem like that. And they just, I think they thought they were being supportive, but they weren't. They were making my life so much harder. And it all sort of culminated in 2 weeks before doing my finals. The head of year sort of sat me down and said, look, I'm thinking of writing to the GMC and saying that, yes, you can finish the degree, but it'll be an academic thing. It won't be for you to then go out and be a doctor. And I think hearing that 2 weeks before finals because of your disability is soul crushing. But I'm glad that I sort of took I'll show you, I'll put 2 fingers up to you, and I'll go and do my own thing actually. So I managed to pass it and got through, and then they have no reason to fail me. But that was hard. I know what it's like to be a patient. I know what it's like to not be listened to by doctors. I know what it's like to want help but not know how to ask for it because you're not really sure what's wrong. You just know there is something wrong. And I think that that's really important, and I think that really adds to my job. Like I can empathise with patients on a different level because of what I've been through. I think it's something that really helps me deal with the EDS, is knowing that, well, I've now learnt so much. I've now learnt so much about being human, being a patient, being me, that I need to use that to help other people if I can. And I think that's why I don't want to change jobs.
How are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Do you want to do anything? Hi, my name is Becky and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS. I'm on quite a lot of medication, which I hate, but it keeps me alive, so yay. So I have kind of systemic issues in pretty much every organ. So joints, lots of dislocations and pain. My autonomic system is a little bit haywire. My stomach doesn't digest food properly. What else? Oh, my lungs. Yeah, that's quite a big one. Because my lungs are so rubbish. If I overexert myself, literally just a little bit too much, my airways will just go. And I hadn't quite realised. So by the time that I actually was trying to treat it, it was too late. And to then be told by the paramedics, you know, silent chest, we're rushing you to resus, all those things. I was in there for 16 hours trying to be stabilised, critical care, all this kind of stuff. To then be told it was a bit too close this time. And I think it's those moments when you actually go, oh, stuff like that isn't actually normal to experience. It's not normal to experience life-threatening situations like that.
Maggie is Becky's mum, as well as being a consultant anaesthetist at the UHNM NHS Trust. She never envisaged this life for her daughter.
When I've seen my daughter going through what she goes through, and I've heard some of the dismissive comments of doctors, it's something that really needs to be challenged, both that attitude as well as the difficulty getting to the right care.
What are the dismissive comments?
It's all in your head. It's an anxiety disorder. We can't explain this. Yes, it's associated with a lot of people with Ehlers-Danlos, but we don't know why. And I feel that there's an arrogance there in the medical profession that thinks that just because we can't understand something, that means it doesn't exist. Surely if we can't understand something, that means we haven't looked into it well enough yet. The average time it takes for somebody with different problems related to EDS to get a diagnosis is 10 years, and it can be 10 years for each individual type of problem that you can get. And people are having massive impacts on their life and their ability to live their life purely because they're not getting the right attention. And then when you do find somebody who's seen it before, who knows what to do about it, I've seen the relief that that causes in my daughter to actually have somebody not only admitting that they don't understand it all, but saying that it's real and that they've seen other people like it and they know what can help. And that's what we need until such a time as we've got a better understanding of why it happens and whether we can make it better. I don't think there's likely to be a cure, but we should at least be treating the symptoms to maximise the quality of life that these patients have got.
You have a remarkably different attitude to these things than a lot of people perhaps would have. Why is that, you feel?
I just think that if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. And I don't really like crying. But also, no, I just think sometimes you just have to accept the fact that it sucks. But you can still do things, and that actually your life isn't worth any less because you have these things, and you can still enjoy stuff. I think you can pity, I have like pity party days where if everything is just getting a bit too overwhelming, I'll let myself feel that. But then I just think it's really important to actually recognise the fact that it is hard, but I'm still alive.
What are your underlying emotions when you see what Becky has to suffer with day in and day out?
There's a lot of them. I mean, there's sadness. There's grief over what I thought her life would be like up until 4 or 5 years ago and what it actually is like now. Pride at how she faces stuff that she shouldn't have to face, that I think most people my age and older would really struggle with. I would struggle with it.
What kind of a mom has she been, and what kind of a mom is she?
I think it's really interesting. I think until I had a cardiac arrest when I was 6, and it was as a result of, so I have a contact allergy to alcohol. I had a chest infection, essentially, already kind of respiratory infection. Just the combination of a spray with alcohol in it just made the cardiac arrest. But essentially, up until that point, I think because she's always felt as if there's something not quite right, she was actually quite protective and quite, not bubble wrap, but was very much like on edge, kind of all the time. After the cardiac arrest, people expect her to have been even more protective. And actually, she went the complete kind of opposite way and was very much like, well, we nearly lost you, so yeah, let's go do that thing. But yeah, as a mum, well, she's my mum. She's great. I love her, and my dad as well, obviously. But yeah, as a medical mum, I can't really fault her. I don't really know.
If you feel you might be suffering from these problems, it might be EDS, it might not, and it might have another explanation. But you need to do whatever you can to research who might take you seriously. You might feel very disappointed in some members of the medical profession to the point that you will be reluctant to seek help. But please keep looking and please keep researching. I wish it was easier, I really do.
As you can see, individuals and families find themselves struggling not only with the physical impacts of the condition, but also with a lack of understanding, comprehensive support, and treatment options.
EDS UK was set up in 1987 to support, advise and inform those living with the Ehlers-Danlos syndromes. Over 30 years later, and they are the largest UK charity that exclusively represents and supports people with all types of EDS.
So we're the Ehlers-Danlos Support UK. We cover all 4 nations and support over 13,000 members across the UK. So we run support groups run by trained volunteers who either have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or hypermobility spectrum disorders. We also help support researchers find participants for their projects so that we can provide a better evidence base for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And we also do an advice line that people can phone or they can email in with any questions that they have. And one of the things that we've been doing a lot more of over the last year is campaigning to better fund and find support within the NHS for people with this condition.
Talk to me about the challenges that you face.
The challenges that the community of people living with Ehlers-Danlos in the UK face is the lack of a coordinated care pathway within the NHS. There's a lack of equitable care depending on where you live within the UK. So, for example, last year we launched petitions across all the nations in the UK. We garnered over 33,000 signatures. We were calling for NHS services. So within England itself, we were asking for a care pathway for people with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or hypermobility spectrum disorders. And because there just isn't one in place. And there was some research that came out earlier this year that proved that it was up to 20 years for people to get a diagnosis for this particular type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So there's a real need for this, and there are people out there that just aren't getting the care that they need, despite best efforts on a number of different fronts. And what we're trying to do is to help bring together that multidisciplinary team that's needed within the NHS to deliver the care that these people need.
So what is your advice to anybody who thinks they have EDS, they're fighting for a diagnosis? What's your advice to them?
My advice to them is to come join us, come join our community, have a good look on our website, phone our advice line or email in if you've got any questions and get involved. We can put you in touch with other people who are living with EDS or HSD, who are in your area or, who have a similar interest to you, and you can connect online. And it's so powerful being able to meet others who are going through the same as you are. And to give you an example, when I was in Westminster, one of the staff there, told us that they had EDS and they'd never met anyone with EDS. And us being there is just such a wonderful experience for them to actually make a connection and meet someone else and just share those experiences. So it's very powerful.
Annabelle's Challenge is another charity dedicated to supporting people with vascular EDS, a potentially life-threatening variant associated with fragility of blood vessels and hollow organs. The charity was founded in January 2013 by Jared and Sarah Griffin after they were told their daughter Annabelle then aged 3, had vascular EDS. She was the youngest person in the UK to be diagnosed with the condition.
I'm Jared, the founder and CEO of Annabelle's Challenge. We're a UK charity that supports patients and families affected by vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And part of our work, which is providing support and guidance, is also running a helpline. And what we've seen over the last 2 years is a significant increase in inquiries from people that are caught up in the diagnostic phase of their journey, trying to find answers. And it's usually down to healthcare professionals not being aware of EDS, and the ones that are aware of it are dismissing it and causing a problem for the patient where they just seem to be caught in a circle between going back to their GP, being referred to consultants that don't understand, and not getting to the root cause of the concerns that they've got. That increase in inquiries is putting extra pressure on our resources, where ordinarily we'd be looking after people that are going through the process of getting a diagnosis for vascular EDS. So the wider EDS community is getting impacted significantly through this. What we'd like to see going forward is more healthcare professionals engaging with patients and trying to listen to their concerns and look at Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and make the appropriate referral to getting a diagnosis.
Perfect. You enjoyed that?
Yeah, that's good. That's funny. Okay.
Happy?
So I'm Sophie Walker and I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Describe EDS and what EDS is to you.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is a rare connective tissue disorder. To me, it's a chronic and debilitating condition that I've had my whole life, but I was only diagnosed recently.
Hi, my name's Amelia McLaughlin and I have EDS.
Did you enjoy the clap?
No.
How does that affect you?
Affect me? Lots of different ways. So I started with joint involvement, mainly dislocations of pretty much every single joint in my body. And then it progressed to stomach issues. So I then had gastroparesis, where my stomach essentially paralysed and I wasn't able to eat. I've also had retinal detachments because of it, where essentially you go blind for a little bit because the kind of vitreous humour in your eyes is also made of collagen, and that was faulty. And then finally, I now have a bladder that doesn't work either because it won't contract because the collagen that makes up your bladder and that makes it a strong muscle is faulty. So now I have a suprapubic catheter. And then obviously I've got my wheels because of bilateral hip dislocations that have caused them to be quite weak.
Hello, hi. I'm Amelia, I'm getting my package. Amelia, hello. You're okay. I hate these. I know. No, you don't like it, do you? No, darling. Is life any better with it? It's a lot easier. Well, that's what you've got to think, haven't you? I'm sorry. That's it, perfect. You want this all baked?
What would you say has been the worst, most difficult incident that you've had to go through?
Probably when I had to take quite a lot of time off uni for being in hospital. That was with my stomach, which then evolved straight after to my bladder, and then having to restart the year of med school again, so kind of leave my cohort behind. And my mental health took a really big dive then, and that was the hardest time. See, I told you I cry easily. Yeah.
Why did you find that so difficult?
I think it was very much just having to accept quickly that my life was completely different and I wasn't like the other people in my year.
when I was at uni, that's when things started to get worse for me. I did biomedical science at university, and I would notice that I was tired all of the time. A lot of my friends were managing to go to lectures, go to the gym, and then have a social life on top, and also have part-time jobs on the weekends. I did try and keep up with them, but I would constantly feel run down, my glands were always swollen. I was completely and utterly exhausted trying to keep up with them, and I couldn't understand why, but I put it down to me, that's just how my body is.
Were you jealous?
Yeah, I was jealous, and I would miss out on a lot of things. People would say, oh, do you want to come and do this today? Do you want to come for a run? Do you want to? And I would really want to join in, but I knew it would exhaust me, and I had to be very careful, but I didn't understand why, and it was frustrating, it was upsetting, and I do feel like I was alienated as a result by my friends, maybe not on purpose, but because I wasn't fitting in with what they were doing. And I really struggled mentally with that for a long time.
Why did you want to be in med school? What was the goal? What is the goal?
What is the goal? To be a doctor, hopefully. It's kind of what I've always wanted to do since I was little, playing with doctors' kits, all that jazz. And all my family are in the NHS. No doctors, touch wood, I'll be the first. And all of them were like, no, don't do it, go into accounting, go into finance.
My name's Ruth Kinston, and I'm an emergency physician working at UH&M. But I also work for Keele University, and my role at Keele is as one of the final year co-leads. I feel very, very privileged to work with the students that I work with. I mean, you know, they're all incredibly bright, and to get yourself a place at medical school, you've got to be hugely motivated. We pride ourselves at Keele for selecting people that have actually already demonstrated that they're very orientated towards serving their community. They've taken on some responsibility. You know, they're not just, I guess, boffins or people that are good at A-levels.
So as soon as I found out that I had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I asked for reasonable adjustments, which is something that you can ask for if you've got a disability or a health condition where you need adjustments to your work, to your career. And I asked for reasonable adjustments to help me manage my illness. As this is going to be a lifelong illness, it's not something that you can recover from. However, the treatment that I've received has been nothing short of appalling.
It's one of those conditions that you often kind of face a lot of resistance from medical professionals, and you know, it's kind of made me think like, oh, is this the role I want to be? And obviously it's hard. It's been hard to continue, and there's many times where I thought about, you know, dropping out and not continuing. But then, you know, still here, still want to finish. I want to do it for the 18-year-old me that came into med school.
I mean, having this conversation today is a very difficult thing for anybody, let alone to have gone through the things that you've gone through.
Yeah, and you feel like such a burden on everyone, you know. Having so many additional needs and so many extra things, you feel like, you know, people are better off without you. You know, you feel like such a burden, and you can't be the friend, the daughter that other people perhaps could be.
Like so many conditions, and Ehlers-Danlos is not unique, but you know, we only scratch the surface when we learn things at medical school, you know, enough to know its existence, its general basis of disease. But I think the privilege of doing the job I do, and actually finding out about my students, as I say, you know, with the desire to help them self-actualise, to help them be the best clinicians they can be, means that, you know, I need to sit down with them, I need to be inquisitive, you know, I need to get them to tell me their stories, what their challenges are, so that we can ensure that the way we're approaching Year 5, the course, and, you know, perhaps even things that we need to do in the hospital meet their needs. And certainly Ehlers-Danlos with it, you know, now my understanding has developed through working with students who've had Ehlers-Danlos has evolved. I realise there's just so much to do. Yes, there are physical things, you know, and at times, You know, there can be problems, you know, acute problems that need to be dealt with, meaning sort of things like sort of time out course because things are sort of dislocated or they've got sort of pain or, you know, problems physically. But other times we need to make sort of more far-reaching adaptations within the course, you know, considering things like sort of access to hospital areas and placements so that, you know, we're able to give them equity really, so that they can engage with the course as much as anybody else who hasn't got that particular problem, maybe has a different problem, but we can, you know, make sure that they're, you know, as I say, they're able to be the best clinicians they can be ultimately.
You describe all your feelings at that point and you say, well, I've got to live with this and I don't want to live with it and life shouldn't be like that. Did you ever not want to live?
Yeah, there was yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the pain, I can't even describe how bad the pain can be. And I remember coming into work and really pushing myself to even come into work. And I was so proud of myself for even driving an hour to work. And I didn't know if that was going to last forever. And the thought of that, without having an end date to this pain, was awful. It was horrendous. Yeah. Sorry.
In my 4th year of med school, there was multiple times where I attempted to take my own life because of all the problems I was having with my health due to EDS.
What did you hope doing that would solve?
I just wanted it to stop the pain. And that was always how it would start. I'd start by saying, I just want the pain to stop. So I'd take painkillers, and then it'd be, I just want to sleep. So I'd take more painkillers, and then it would be, Amelia, if you keep taking more, you know, you won't wake up, you'll die. And then that kind of voice in your head that goes, that won't be that bad. You know, that pain would stop. You wouldn't have to fix your broken body every single day. You wouldn't have to look in the mirror at a body that's so different to what it used to be, with tubes in all sorts of places there shouldn't be. So you just take more.
If there was a message that you could say to your mum, and it's so hard to say these things to your mum because you just often, if I ever had a chat with my mum, I'd look at her and you just cry. One go, you don't even speak.
I think the hardest part is, obviously this is a genetic condition, and there's signs now that my younger sister, who's 12, who's my little mini-me, there's signs that she has EDS too. And I know my mum massively blames herself, and she feels horrible. You know, every time she comes and sees my catheter ripped out of my body and me screaming in pain, I know she blames herself. And I just wish that she didn't. And I would tell her that it's not her fault. And that, you know, she didn't know at the time that I was born that I would have all these problems. You know, no one could have anticipated that. So I think, you know, when I didn't want to be alive, it kind of, I felt like that must have been hard for her to see, you know.
As the years went on, I started to realise that Amelia was, you know, having a few difficulties. And I think at that point, as I wasn't Amelia's year lead, I was a professional development tutor. Again, my job there was, as well as being there as a professional sort of role model and being able to advise her on the things necessary for professional development, was just to listen, to allow her to sort of offload, and again, gently just to, you know, where necessary, sort of mention, you know, contacts and, you know, things that might help her sort of tackle problems. That said, I have to say, at the time when I started to sort of really realise that Amelia was quite challenged with her Ehlers-Danlos, she was over at Shrewsbury, and one of the, you know, the deputy deans, one of the, you know, the yearlies there was already providing tremendous support, and but still it's an enormous battle, and I think we learnt quite a lot through Amelia's experience. You know, I always feel in some ways, you know, it's frustrating for the student, you know, when a medical or an organisation like my medical school is learning you know, about a sort of student's challenges, you know, invariably they end up being the first one. We do try and make sure that there is a memory to what we're learning, but it doesn't mean it's any easier for the student who's having to explain things to us. Again, what I've learnt about that particular illness is that it's so diverse, and the way it can present, the way it can affect people's lives, that I think, you know, inevitably it's about sitting down with the student, and as I say, getting them, you know, being inquisitive, getting them to tell me what they're currently facing in terms of challenges, and then working out together, you know, a plan that is, you know, that together we think is achievable to help them become the best they can be.
So I found an aneurysm myself at home through listening with a stethoscope, and eventually I had a scan that confirmed that I'd got a very large aneurysm. So when I first spoke to my surgeon, he told me how serious it was, but that we'd have to wait for genetic results. I waited 3 months. Every single day was horrible. Every single day I woke up and I felt lucky to be alive. Every time my heart rate shot up, I would wonder if I was dying. Because I was waiting so long for my genetic results and it was having a huge mental impact on me, I told him to go ahead with the surgery, whether my results were back or not, which meant that the risks were going to be even higher if I had vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. He eventually injected some contrast agent through my aneurysm itself, and he told me to keep very still, and I could see it on the screen next to me, and I knew that I had to keep still, because if he even poked the wall of my aneurysm with the wire, it could have ruptured the aneurysm, and I would have watched myself on the screen bleed to death. That was probably the most horrendous day of my life, worse than the surgery day. I could have potentially watched my own death on the screen. I could see how big it was. It was a lot bigger than we all were anticipating, which meant that the blood flow to my brain was quite a lot. So if they put a balloon in that opening, it would have, which was inside the aneurysm, it would have meant that I would have most likely stroked or become paraplegic. And it was at that point that I knew that I probably wouldn't make the surgery, because it would have meant that he would have to insert this artery going to my brain onto a graft, which has never been done before. I remember going in for the surgery, and I used to work with a few colleagues here that were looking after me, and going into the surgery I felt completely numb. I felt like it wasn't happening to me. Maybe it's my way of coping, and it was only 6 months ago that it happened, so I still feel very numb. But I remember being wheeled into the theatre, and all of my colleagues, a few of my colleagues ex-colleagues were crying, and they were holding my hand, and they were actually weeping more than I wasn't crying at all. I think I'd accepted the fact I was going to die. I'd come to terms with that in that week. And I remember telling them, please look after my mum and dad. Sorry. I said, just tell them that I was okay and that I wasn't scared. And I remember just looking at the clock and thinking, this is a nice last memory to have, surrounded by my old colleagues who I adored. And I've had a good life, you know. It was a nice feeling. I felt very supported. And then I remember waking up in intensive care, hands down, it was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. And I remember that I still had a tube inside me, so I couldn't speak. And I woke up with lines, central line coming out of my neck, arterial line coming out of my arm, 2 big chest drains coming out of my chest, a catheter. I was hooked up to every machine going. And I remember just waking up and seeing my dad's face, and he was ecstatic. And my mum was ecstatic, and I could just tell things had gone well. And then I saw my surgeon, who I couldn't stop hugging and holding his hand. And I asked him if he would come for dinner at my house. But
what are you going to make him when he comes?
I don't know, maybe a pie. I don't know. It was the most amazing experience. It really was. And the care that I received at this hospital was phenomenal.
Invisible illnesses pose a multitude of challenges for NHS trusts up and down the country. Yes, it's evident so much more does need to be done, but how are things changing, and just how quickly?
Today we're at the Royal Stoke Hospital to speak to UH&M's Deputy Chief Nurse Jane Holmes about what they're doing to further enhance patient pathways for those with EDS.
My name's Jane Holmes. I'm Deputy Chief Nurse at UH&M. I think for our local population, anything that's important to them needs to be important to us. And quickly became aware of Ehlers-Danlos and the disconnect between the different types and how that affects the patient's journey from when they're admitted or attend hospital through to their discharge. Seems to be quite disconnected depending on the type of Ehlers-Danlos that you've got. So to our mind, we didn't know enough about it. We needed to understand it more. We commissioned a 6-month research piece. This helped us understand what it means to our patients, what it means to our local population, and also to staff awareness. Do people know what EDS is? And if they do, how do they help our patients? And this piece of research was commissioned by our charities. What we've uncovered in that report is there's still a lot of unknowns. It is a rare illness and we do need to understand it more. We really want to be front and centre of getting it right for all our patients. We have a specialist centre in Sheffield, and to the best of our knowledge that's where our patients with EDS who needed specialism could go. But we found out through this research piece that actually that's not the case, and Sheffield only sees certain types of EDS, and we have patients with different types of EDS in our community. So it's really important that we're front and centre for all our vulnerable adults and children, but equally for all our patients who are suffering from disease, illness profiles that we don't understand fully.
We've spoke to patients who haven't been diagnosed for upwards of 10 years, 20 years. The mental struggles, the mental impact that can have is astronomical. Where do you see this ending up? Where would you like to get to?
We'd like to understand EDS in its entirety and make our patient pathways better. We need to understand at what point where that intervention is required to actually make a difference. We need to listen to our patients, and we really try to. We don't always get it right, but we want to hear where we can improve. We really need to pull together that pathway and ensure that there is those connections whereby that we can support, rather than saying, well, there's a specialist centre at Sheffield, what can we do to make that patient journey better? We have applied for a grant to study EDS in maternity to understand that more, where our mums with EDS are having hypermobile problems, cardiac problems, or any EDS. You know, there are 13 different types that we're learning about more and more. We need to share the information that we are learning with our staff to support that diagnosis, treatment and pathway plans for our patients who do have invisible or rare illnesses. So we need to support them, and we very much want to do that at UH&M. It's so important to us.
Gaslit and disbelieved. Yet the symptoms are evidently there, life-changing, life-threatening symptoms. This film, thanks to UH&M Charity, starts the conversation, but it's just the beginning. People need to listen and things need to change to help so many people living with EDS.
We're trying really hard to improve education on this. It's something that definitely needs investigating more, it needs more research, it needs more education. We need to spread the word, and we need to improve the care that we're all receiving.
Keep pushing, keep trying, gather your information. If there's no one there to coordinate and organise everything that's happened, you kind of have to be your own coordinator and your own organiser.
You have to laugh at it. You know, it gives you so many negatives, but it gives you so many funny stories. And if you're not going to be positive about it, then life probably is going to suck a bit. And I think once you come to terms with the fact that you're not going to have a normal life, you are going to have all these barriers, but you can still try, I think life becomes easier. Yeah.
Please take this seriously. It can have a major impact on someone's health, their quality of life, and just their overall well-being, whether that's physical or psychological. It's really important to understand that actually you as doctors or you as medical professionals have a major part to play in how our lives go.